Ekaterina Samachkina, better known as Ekaterina Karaglanova, was born on July 30, 1994 in Ivantayevka, a city very close to Moscow, the capital of Russia. According to sources, the young woman grew up in a family of doctors. Her father Stanislav Samachkin is a urologist, and her mother, Olga Samachkina, is a cardiologist. Ekaterina was an exemplary student. She learned several languages, studied humanitarian subjects, and even won some competitions in the school Olympics. During her adolescence, the young woman also participated in beauty contests and dreamed of one day becoming a successful model. In the 8th grade, Ekaterina began to think about her future profession. She was undecided between journalism and medicine. Later, she opted for medicine, and after 9th grade, she entered a specialized class at the university. Later, Ekaterina entered the Russian National Research Medical University, and while in her 2nd year of college, she began her career as a model. And that's when she decided to adopt the pseudonym Karaglanova, as she thought her real surname, Samachkina, didn't seem like an appropriate surname for a model. The advertising contracts she signed as a model allowed her to change her life, becoming financially independent. She also earned money as a beauty blogger and monetizing her social media. During that time, she had to balance work with study, and because of this, she didn't have much free time. Ekaterina participated in many beauty competitions and won several. In 2018, she came in first place in Miss Maxim, an important pageant in the region. Parallel to this, she began a clinical residency at the Department of Dermatovenereology. Ekaterina regularly posted photos of herself on Instagram, and her followers often compared her appearance to that of movie star Audrey Hepburn, a famous Belgian actress from the 50s and 60s. She also published a little about her daily life on social media, such as plans to redecorate her apartment, trips abroad, and photos of her travels across the European continent. At the time of the events, she was 24 years old, had more than 85,000 followers on Instagram, and had recently graduated in medicine. In addition to her Instagram account, Ekaterina also maintained a beauty and travel blog that had thousands of subscribers. In 2019, she had started a new relationship and was planning a trip to the Netherlands in July to celebrate her 25th birthday. At the same time, rumors emerged that Ekaterina was getting involved with a man much older than her in exchange for financial favors. Her closest friends, however, said that this was not true and that she had a very stable financial life and did not need it. On July 27, 2019, Ekaterina's parents began to find it strange about her lack of contact. According to them, the young woman stopped answering the phone on the 22nd, and since then, she had not been in contact with anyone close to her. According to the young woman's parents, she had just returned from a trip to Greece, where she had spent her vacation. Faced with this scenario, the young woman's parents sought out the owner of the apartment where their daughter lived, explained the situation, and asked him to open the place for them. Before that, Ekaterina's mother had contacted the owner and asked him to check if everything was okay with her daughter, but the concern was so great that she and the young girl's father decided to go in person to see if everything was okay. Upon entering their daughter's apartment, her parents were faced with a frightening scene. There, they found a large red suitcase, and inside that suitcase was Ekaterina's body. Desperate, the young woman's father called an ambulance, but there was nothing more the paramedics could do. Ekaterina had already been dead for some time. Her mother started screaming, which caught the attention of neighbors who had no idea what had happened. The young woman had wounds on her chest and a deep cut on her neck. The suitcase the body was in was precisely the one the model would use to make her trip in a few days. As it was evident that it was a crime, the police were also called, and they quickly arrived at the scene. According to reports, the apartment had a horrible smell. The young woman's body was in the center of the room, on top of the suitcase. She was practically naked, dressed only in a belt and stockings. Subsequently, the body was taken for autopsy, and according to the coroner, there were signs that the victim had had sex, but according to the analysis, they were not forced. The doctor also said that there were 19 punctures on the young woman's body, that were made with a sharp object with a blade, probably a knife. Most of these perforations were in the chest region, but the most fatal was in the neck region. The cause of death was given as hemorrhage. The young woman's parents were obviously devastated, and her mother fell ill and had to go to the hospital. It is believed that the crime took place on the night of July 23. According to reports, that night neighbors living downstairs heard strange noises. In testimony, one of the neighbors downstairs said that a friend of hers and her daughter spent the night there and, around midnight, heard some kind of knock. At first, she thought it was her friend's daughter who was playing and making noise, but the girl was already asleep. With that, she realized that the knock was coming from the apartment above, but both she and her friend thought it was someone just moving furniture or something like that. They then went outside to get some air before going to sleep, and when they returned, about an hour later, there was no more noise. The crime had a lot of repercussions in Russia and left the entire country shocked. In addition to Russia, the case also had repercussions in other countries, mainly in Europe. According to neighbors, Ekaterina was a polite person and always greeted everyone in the building. She had recently rented the apartment in Moscow and lived there alone. Neighbors also said that she used to take many friends there. The building in which Ekaterina lived had 9 floors and was built in 1962. This building is considered famous in Moscow because in the past several Russian celebrities lived in it. The police cordoned off the area where Ekaterina's apartment was located so that forensic experts could do their work looking for evidence. Later, forensic experts stated that there were no signs of a struggle in the apartment, and that the criminal took the weapon he had used to take the victim's life. After the crime, many residents of the building began to leave their apartments in fear. In fact, the downstairs neighbor who was interviewed by the police said she was moving out of the place. According to her, she could no longer sleep after she found out that terrible crime had happened right next to her. A few days later, a photo from the crime scene showing Ekaterina's body was leaked onto the internet. This caused great outrage among the victim's followers, but excited internet detectives who began to create countless theories about what happened to the young woman. One of these theories would be that the criminal wanted to send a message, which is why he placed the body inside a suitcase, leaving it in the center of the room. This would have a whole symbolism behind it, which would mean that the criminal would be saying, "Now, you can go." In April 2019, Ekaterina posted a photo of Okwekeon on her Instagram along with a note from a secret admirer that read, "This is for you. I want to meet a woman for whom I can do things and make her happy every day. When I saw you, I realized that this woman is you. If I have a small chance to be with a girl like you, give me a tip," Ekaterina said in another publication that she had been receiving flowers and notes from this same admirer for a few weeks now. As a result, after the fact, the theory arose that this secret admirer was responsible for the crime. During the investigations, the police had access to images from the security cameras of the building where the apartment is located. In these images, it was possible to see a man entering the building and then Ekaterina's apartment, and after a while, he comes out with a suitcase in his hand. This man was later identified as 33-year-old Maxim Guriev. He also lived in Moscow and worked as a football coach. The police officers reviewed all the footage, and in addition to Maxim, they saw another man entering the building in Ekaterina's apartment. This man was later identified and located by police. His identity was not revealed, but what is known is that he is a rich 52-year-old businessman who was in a relationship with Ekaterina. In fact, he would travel with her to Holland, where they celebrated the young woman's 25th birthday. For the police, the rumors that Ekaterina was seeing an older man in exchange for financial favors came from this relationship she had with this 52-year-old businessman. Although the businessman was caught on the building's cameras entering and leaving the place, the date of the recording was days before the crime, and after that he never returned to the apartment. As a result, Maxim Guriev was the only person who was in Ekaterina's apartment on the day of the crime, and he returned to the scene 2 days later. Following logic, the chances of him being responsible for the crime were high. As I already said, in the footage, Maxim appears leaving the building with a suitcase in hand, and this made the police theorize that he had fled to another country. Due to this, a capture alert was issued against him, and while he has not been located, investigations continue. During these investigations, the police discovered that Ekaterina had been being blackmailed for some time with intimate photos of herself. She talked about it with some friends earlier this year, but never went to the police to file a report. According to a friend, Ekaterina was very alarmed and feared for her safety. She reportedly told her friend that someone was watching her with the intention of obtaining information about her personal life. The friend, however, imagined it was some hater or envious people. Even during the investigations, speculation arose that Ekaterina was a luxury escort. The police then decided to investigate further to find out whether this was true or not, as the young woman had a degree in medicine and also earned a lot of money from her social networks, so for them, it didn't make much sense for her to be an escort. When checking Ekaterina's cell phone and computer, the police found several of her profiles with different names on dating sites. All these profiles had one thing in common. In the description, Ekaterina said that she was interested in older and successful men for a mutual exchange of pleasure. For the police, this was an indication that the young woman was indeed going out with older men in exchange for financial benefits. Shortly afterwards, the police also found Ekaterina's profiles on escort websites. In these profiles, Ekaterina used more provocative photos, and the description said that she was a woman for demanding men. With this speculation that the young woman was a luxury escort was confirmed, and a new range of investigation opened up. When asked by the police whether they knew about their daughter's double life, Ekaterina's very surprised parents said they had no idea about it. They also said that it didn't make sense, as the family had excellent financial conditions and Ekaterina didn't need to resort to that kind of thing to get money. I found no information as to whether the police spoke to the victim's friends to find out if they were aware of this. With this new information in hand, the police began to theorize that the criminal could be a client of Ekaterina. As the main suspect in the crime was still Maxim Gareev, the police continued to search for him. But to everyone's surprise, Maxim was still in Russia, contrary to what the authorities thought, and to top it off, he went to the police voluntarily and confessed to the crime. This confession by Maxim was recorded by authorities and later released by the Russian Public Prosecutor's Office. In it, Maxim Gareev says that he attacked Ekaterina, striking at least 5 times in the chest and neck with a knife. He said he did it because the young woman insulted and humiliated him several times. According to him, he found an advertisement for the young woman on an escort website and decided to hire her services, which were offered for $230 an hour. He said he went to her apartment, and after they had sex, she started saying that he was ugly and that he hadn't been able to satisfy her in bed. According to him, she would have said that he was poor and that her other clients were rich and better than him. He then, furious upon hearing these things, went to the kitchen where he took a knife and returned to the bedroom. A very scared Ekaterina tried to run to the bathroom, but he pulled her and threw her on the bed, finishing the crime afterwards. Although Maxim initially said in his confession that he dealt the victim around 5 blows, in fact, as we already know, there were 19 blows. All of this would have happened in the victim's room, and after committing the crime, Maxim cleaned the entire room and placed Ekaterina's body inside the suitcase in the center of the room. His intention, at first, was to take the body out of the apartment and then get rid of it, but for some reason, he didn't follow through with this plan and ended up leaving the body and the suitcase in the place where they were found. The suitcase that Maxim appears carrying in the footage, which the police thought had his things for a possible escape, was actually filled with clothes and sheets with Ekaterina's blood on them. That was part of his plan that he didn't follow through on, getting rid of the evidence. Maxim said that after committing the crime and leaving the victim's apartment, he returned to the location 2 days later, but left without taking anything. The police were already aware of Maxim's return to the scene of the crime, as everything was filmed by the building's security cameras as I mentioned previously. Maxim said he stayed at his home until the day he decided to turn himself into the police. During his confession, Maxim said he was sorry for the crime and would cooperate with the investigations. According to the police, he already had a criminal record, but it was not disclosed what his previous crimes were. After the end of his confession and the police investigation, Maxim was preventively detained in a Moscow prison where he was awaiting trial. During the time he was awaiting his trial, it was reported that the man seemed depressed and tired, and even tried to take his own life inside his cell. According to reports, the man frequently expressed certain intentions regarding taking his own life. This led the prison administration to ensure that there were as many people as possible in the cell with him, in addition to avoiding methods with which he could carry out the act. Maxim's arrest divided the opinion of people close to him and also those who followed the case. A high school teacher of his said in an interview that he was a very kind and polite boy, and she didn't believe he was responsible for this. His parents said that when he got angry, he would sometimes snap, but they never imagined he would be capable of doing something like that. Friends and co-workers of his said in an interview that he always seemed like a very calm person and never showed any signs of being violent. Some people who followed the case blamed the victim for what happened, saying that if Maxim paid for Ekaterina's services, she should never have mistreated him. This same line was replicated by a TV presenter called Dana Borisova, who added that she felt sad for Maxim. Other people who didn't believe his version said that it was all a big lie to try to get away with it, and that he committed the crime just for pleasure. The police even spoke to other escorts that Maxim had left before committing the crime. One of them said that the man had problems with impotence. Another said that he never showed violence when he went out with him, and another stated that he believed that Ekaterina had been victimized by someone else, and that Maxim could be forced to take the blame. Maxim Gariv was tried in a Moscow court, and during this trial at no point did he deny that he was guilty. He even apologized to Ekaterina's parents, saying that if he could go back in time, he would change what he did. After a few hours of deliberation, Moscow's Nikolinsky court found Maxim guilty of the crime against Ekaterina, and he received a 9-year prison sentence. See, guys, that was the sentence he received. I researched it in several sources, because when I saw it, I didn't believe it. I thought it was a mistake, but in all the sources it says that he really only got 9 years in prison. I don't know if there is anything legal behind this that could perhaps be explained, and I didn't have access to it, but that was really worth it. In addition to the sentence, Maxim was also ordered to pay 2.5 million rubles in compensation to the victim's family. This amount is around $25,000. After the trial ended, Ekaterina's parents said they would appeal the sentence as they found it insignificant compared to what Maxim did to their daughter. Maxim is currently serving his sentence in a medium security prison in Moscow. Well folks, that is it for today. Thank you very much for watching till the end. Best wishes, and I see you next time.